What I'm going to do is just have a little look here. Maybe.
It should be easy to get a winning hand of poker.
And now, Dan, it's your turn. Jeremy, me, it's your turn. Your task is to deal the cards face down in a pile right there. Right there. That's it. And at some point, you can pause and cut the cards. Put the bottom half on top. That's great. And now deal 2 or 3 cards at a time. 2 or 3 cards at a time. That's it. And pause again and cut the cards again. Put the bottom half on top. That's it. And deal 1, 2, or 3 cards, whatever you feel like. And at some point, Dan, you stop whenever the impulse strikes you. Right there. We'll take those cards and we're done.
So that very impulsive.
Now, Jeremy, we are back to you. Take the cards.
All right.
Your task is to deal the cards out one at a time into 2 piles. But here's the thing. You can deal them back and forth, or you can deal a couple over here, a couple over here, back and forth. Whatever you feel. Exactly. One at a time, face down. That's it.
Who knows what's going to happen? I wouldn't know.
Now, I don't even want to touch those cards. Think of the randomness that has happened in this friendship game. You mixed the cards as you dealt them to the table. You shuffled the cards at the outset, and you just dealt them out however you felt like it, and all of those decisions generated these 2 piles. Dan, take the top card of that pile. Jeremy, take the top card of that pile, and show me, and show the camera what cards you got. A red 2 and a red 8. A red 2 and a red 8.
You make a red 10 combined.
Now think about this carefully. I removed these 2 cards before you even mixed the cards. A red 2 and a red 8.
Oh, okay, that's impressive.
And that's real magic.
That was good. Very cool.
Thank you for your time. My name is Larry Haas. This routine, the friendship game, is one of my borrowed card stunners. That is, it uses a borrowed deck of cards, and it is constructed to be totally astonishing for non-magicians. This is one of the very best card routines I have ever composed. I use it to close out a night in a restaurant or at a table. I even use it to close close-up shows for audiences of non-magicians. It's a very strong piece of card magic, as you will discover when you perform it. This piece started with Johnny Thompson's Double Prediction, which was published on the DVD from 2003, Magic Made Easy. On that DVD, Johnny saves that double prediction toward the end and says that it is a miracle class routine. And it is. For non-magicians, this is a miracle. However, I wanted to apply some of my psychological techniques and scripting techniques to make it even deeper, to make the method even deeper in the lake. And so I have done that. The friendship game, it starts with Johnny's basic pattern and adds psychology along the way. The second phase will also delight magicians as well and may even stump them about how it was achieved. So, the deck is borrowed. And again, what I do, if no one has a deck, I'll introduce my own. But the deck is borrowed. I'm always able to find a borrowed deck, almost always. And I have someone bring the deck to the table, and I have another person join me over here. I like to use a woman and a man. It doesn't matter what side they're on, but I like the picture that creates. And you have a deck of cards. Great. Go ahead and mix those cards. And to avoid the dead time that happens when the cards are being shuffled by this gentleman on this side, I'll turn to the woman and I will say, "Tell me something, Jane. Do you believe in real magic?" And she will say what she says. Sometimes she'll say yes. That's a very common response in the world, actually. But sometimes she might say no. Either way, I'm going to turn it into the fact that I do. So let's say she says yes. I say, "I do too," especially when people work and play together. And I nod. And suddenly everyone agrees because they've gotten the connection. Because almost everyone will agree that real magic does happen when people work and play together. If she says, if I say, "Do you believe in real magic? Do you believe real magic really happens?" And she goes, "No," I'll say, "I understand that response, but I do, especially when people work and play together." And now, even if she said no, she'll be nodding and agreeing, because she will see I was using it in a metaphoric sense, and she will go along. So these are your cards, and you shuffled them, yes. That was your turn, I say to the gentleman. And now it's my turn. And I pick up the cards, and I'm going to pick them up in a way so that the back cards of the deck spread. And as I go here, I'm able to look at the back two cards. What I'm preparing for in this moment is a very old force called the double deal force. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But for now, the key thing to know is I look at these back two cards. I personally prefer to get this glimpse right off the bat, rather than doing what some other people do, is picking up the deck and going to the end of the deck and looking at the cards and then going back. It's too slow. I want this to happen briskly. So I'll pick up the cards and spread them, and I can see that the back two cards are the red queen and the black ace. I silently say to myself, "Red queen, black ace, red queen, black ace." Say that a couple of times, and then I look at the deck, spreading it like this. Red queen, black ace, red queen, black ace, red queen, and I stop like it's significant, and I go, maybe. Black ace, black ace. I look at the people. I'm acting. Like maybe I'm picking up some kind of intuition. Now I've got my two cards, but I keep going and I add one more. I'm not sure. And I'm directing this to the person. Like I'm trying to read their intuitions. And then I go, all right. And I push down the random card I pulled up, and I remove these two cards that match the back two cards over here, and I put them face down. And I will give the cards to the person over here and say, "Take the cards." Now we are set to perform the double deal force. The double deal force appears in a book of card games as early as the late 17th century. So this is a force that's been around a long time. The double deal force is in effect, it can be performed with 1, 2, or 3 cards, and there have been different versions of this throughout the last 300 years or so. But in this particular case, what you have done is these cards dealt down, and they stop wherever they want. This is the traditional version of this. I'm going to supercharge it in a minute. And then these cards are dealt down again into 2 piles, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And now these 2 cards were the former top 2 cards of the deck. This is a strong force. That's one reason it's been around so long. And with appropriate psychology, it can be subtle. However, every miracle has its price. And the price of the double deal force is it really needs a justification for the second deal. Dealing the cards down and stopping at a random spot is very fair. But why are the cards being picked up and then dealt out again? That's the vulnerable part of this process. And effective routines with this force have to be able to get past that moment. Now, This is why I use two people, because having two people involved makes it natural for the cards to be dealt twice. The woman will deal them once, the gentleman will deal them the second time. Everybody gets to play. The other thing about this dynamic of two people being involved is it creates a kind of psychological confusion about the process. And trust me, if you try to perform the friendship game for one person, it will not be as strong. I've tried it. It doesn't work. It's not as strong. The psychology of we're playing a game, the three of us together, really helps disguise the processes. So, what we've just talked about is the traditional double deal force. What I'm going to do when I perform this in the friendship game, what I do is I deepen the psychology of this even further by adding the Ray-Goulet subtlety about mixing the cards in the deck. And I'll show you what's happened. Remember, this person has shuffled the cards. Now it's my turn. I go through the deck. I remove my two cards. These are the mates to the top two cards. No one knows that but me. Now, I say, now it's your turn. I say that to the woman. Take the deck in your hand and start dealing the cards one at a time, face down into a pile right here. That sentence is extremely important. Experienced card magicians know if you don't say that sentence precisely, you might get cards being dealt out like this, you might get cards being dealt face up. Non-magicians do not know much about cards, and so you have to be exquisitely clear. Now it's your turn. Take the cards like you're going to deal them, because you are. And now deal those cards one at a time, face down into a pile right here, and I do this. And then they deal cards. And as soon as the second card has been dealt down, matching these two cards, I let them go a moment longer and I say, wait, go ahead and cut the cards. Put the bottom half on top and deal some more. And wait, cut the cards again and deal the bottom half, or put the bottom half on top and deal some more. And wait, you can deal 2 or 3 cards at a time. It doesn't matter. You're mixing them. Cut them and mix them, and at some point, wherever you like, stop. All of this is smoke and snow, because the only 2 cards that matters over here are the bottom 2 cards which match these. This process of having the cards mixed as they're dealt down creates what Juan Tamariz calls a false memory. A false memory. Non-magicians will feel like these cards were actually mixed thoroughly when you handle this correctly, when you get the timing right. So let's back up and do it one more time to see a little bit of how that goes. Remember, the 2 target cards are on top. They match these cards. So now it's your turn. Deal the cards one at a time. I don't usually say one at a time. I use my finger to indicate one at a time. This is better, I think. So deal the cards face down in a pile. And this indicates one at a time. And they start, and as soon as they get 2 down, I say, and you know what? Pause right there. Cut the cards in your hand and put the bottom half on top. And now deal some more. And you know what? You can deal down 2 or 3 cards at a time. It's completely up to you. Oh, you know what? Mix those cards, or cut the cards again, and deal them down 2 or 3 at a time, and stop whenever you like. They stop wherever they like. If by any chance they've been a fast dealer and they've got most of the deck down, no problem. What you do is set these cards aside and say, you know what? Let's give those cards a cut wherever you like. Great. And now, by the way, these cards go off the performing space over onto the side. So what I've just done is, if this pile is too big so that my male participant is going to be spending a long time dealing them out, I'll just have the person cut the deck, or cut this group of cards. It doesn't matter whatsoever. So whether they cut or not, we're set. And I do this. And now it's your turn again, and I slide these over to the gentleman. Your task is to deal the cards one at a time into 2 piles, and I do this with my finger. But here's the fun part. You can deal 2 cards here or 3 cards here or back and forth, whatever you feel like. This is a decidedly fun part of the friendship game. In most double deal force routines, once this first pile is down and the 2 force cards, the target cards, are on the bottom, this pile is usually handed to someone to just deal out into 2 piles back and forth. And one day in the studio I thought, wait, I don't need to do that. I can get it covered no matter what they do. And I promise you, that was a very good day in magic, because it creates this deep level of freedom over here that you'll soon see is totally irrelevant. So, your task, now it's your turn. Your task is to deal those cards out one at a time into 2 piles. But here's the thing. You can deal 2 or 3 cards over here, or 2 or 3 cards over here, or back and forth. It's completely up to you. Free, free, free. No constraint. And so they do. And they deal them however they want. Makes no difference to me, but what I am doing is I'm watching the end and I see what happens. Now, I watch what happens here, and I'm going to bring about this conclusion. Let me say, I believe what I'm about to show you is unprecedented in terms of concluding the double deal force, and I think you'll find it's very strong. In about 60-65% of my performances, participants do what I just did. That is, they deal the last 2 cards, one onto each pile. I've come to believe that the psychology of putting the last 2 cards on different piles is very, very strong. It isn't just a coin flip. The feeling is they want to cap both of them, and so it's quite frequent. 60, 65, 70% of the time, the target cards are on each pile. When that happens, I say, I don't want to touch those cards. There's a pile for each of you. Go ahead and remove the top card of either pile. And I don't want to touch those. Reach over and take the top card of the other pile. And now they have each one of the target cards, and we'll bring it to conclusion, which I'll discuss in a moment. But I'm a mind reader, so I know you're asking, what if, while they're dealing these cards down, they deal them onto one pile? No problem. That was the insight I had. And that's what we're going to do. Let's make sure that those cards are set properly to show you this. Now I'm going to apply a well-known technique that's often not very well performed, called equivoke, or magician's choice. Equivoke is a very powerful procedure in magic and mentalism. It is also, I think, an advanced procedure. Equivoke is the use of ambiguous language to force a particular outcome. The first appearance of equivoke in print, or magician's choice in print, so far as I can tell, is the Testament of Jerome Sharp by Henri Ducamp in the 19th century. It also appears in Hoffman's Modern Magic, and of course, Anneman used the technique quite widely. In the 20th century, it became widely used and appropriated. However, the real breakthrough on this technique happened with the development of Max Maven's modern approach to this in his book, Verbal Control. Verbal control, in my view, is the threshold to the new age of what I would call modern equivoke, and no one has done it better than the master of this procedure, Max Maven. Eugene Berger also used the technique, and I learned a lot of this process from him. So, let's review where we are. Remember, the 2 target cards are on this pile. They might have been on this pile. So now, without pausing and looking like I'm thinking, I'm going to say this. So we have 2 piles. Now we're going to eliminate one of those piles, because for this we only need 1 pile. When I snap my fingers, pick up either pile and hand it to me. and the person hands me either pile. Let's say they hand me the pile that has the 2 target cards on. Without missing a beat, I say, as I said, I only need 1 pile, and you gave this one to me, right? And I nod. And they have to agree, because they did give me this one. And the equivocal moment has just been lost under their accepting that they handed this pile to me. So I move this hand back, I slowly turn over, I let the woman or the person over here take that card, and fair, I let this person take that card, and then we take it to the end, which you'll see in a moment. Well, what if they picked up the other pile? So we have 2 cards, or 2 piles. Now we're going to eliminate one of those piles, because for this we only need 1 pile. When I snap my fingers, give either pile to me. As I said, we are going to eliminate a pile, and you gave me this one, right? And I drop this over here and say, I don't want to touch those cards. Fair. Go ahead and take the top card. And you reach over and take the next top card. And the target cards are right there. This application of equivoke to the friendship game puts this process here completely out of reach. You will have to trust me. You'll have to try it yourself in the real world. Non-magicians will have no clue. And magicians themselves will wonder what was going to happen right there. I've had magicians tell me that the equivoke verbiage flew right by them, and they had no idea I was using equivoke. I will come back to the equivoke procedure momentarily, but for now, we are going to look at how the routine concludes. We are at this point where this person has one of the target cards and this one has one of the target cards. These are the match. Here's a place where I will pause and recap some of the details to create more false memories. Think of all the random decisions you made. You dealt the cards down to the table however you felt like it. And you cut them too, right? And I nod and they say yes. And I say, and you dealt the cards out into these 2 piles on impulse, however you felt, yes? And those random decisions brought us to these 2 cards. Turn them over. Show the audience. A red queen and a black ace. Red queen and a black ace. Pause. Now you will remember I removed these 2 cards before you even mixed the cards. Once again, laying in that psychological false memory. And she will nod, and I will go, a red queen and a black ace. And that is real magic. That's a closer. In the real world, that's a closer. I've done this for heads of state, quite honestly. I've done this for major scientists who work on top international projects. I did this for the guys at Apple. They had no idea what was happening with this routine. The friendship game is a real-world borrowed card stunner. Let's go back to the equivoke process once again, because there are some details to discuss. First of all, as I was talking, I remembered that the first appearance of equivoke in print was not in the 19th century, but the 18th century, 1786, in the Testament of Jerome Sharp, written by Henri de Cramp, as I said. Now, let's go back to this place in the process where we have 2 piles here. We'll go back to this part of the procedure where we have the 2 target cards on the bottom. And I'm going to kind of walk you through this both at speed and then unpack it a little bit, because the delivery on the equivoke is essential for your success. So first I'll do it at speed and then we'll slow it down. Remember, our person over here has dealt the cards down. Maybe we've cut some off. And now it's your turn again. Go ahead and take the cards. Your task is to deal them down one by one in 2 piles. But here's the fun part. You can deal 2 or 3 cards over here, or 1 or 2 or 3, back and forth, whatever you feel like. Go ahead. They've dealt the last 2 cards on the 2 piles. I don't want to touch those piles. Slide one pile toward yourself, and you slide the other pile toward yourself. And look at the top card of each pile. Now think of all the decisions that brought you to these cards. You mixed the cards, you mixed the cards as you were dealing them down, and you dealt them out however the spirit moved you. What are the 2 cards you got? A red queen and a black ace. You'll remember I removed these 2 cards before you even mixed the cards. A black ace and a red queen. And that is real magic. So, now we will go back. And we will go back to this place where the person has a few more cards to deal down. And they're going and they've dealt 2 cards to 1 pile, to either pile. So we have 2 piles. Now we're going to eliminate one of them because for this we only need 1 pile. When I snap my fingers, hand either pile to me. As I said, I only needed 1 pile and you just gave me this one, yes? Go ahead and take the top card. And you go ahead and take the next top card. Now think about this. Think of the random decisions. You mixed the cards as you were dealing them down, and you decided how the cards would be dealt out. It was completely up to you. And these random decisions generated these 2 cards. Red queen and a black ace, and so on to the end. And we will go back the other place right here. And let's say both the cards have been dealt here. So we have 2 piles. Now we're going to eliminate one of these piles because for this we only need 1 pile. When I snap my fingers, hand either pile to me. As I said, we're going to eliminate a pile and you gave me this one, right? I don't want to touch those cards. Look at the top card. Remove the top card. And you remove the next top card. Now think about the random decisions that brought you to those 2 cards. You mixed the cards as you were dealing them down, and you dealt the cards out however you felt like it. Let's see what 2 cards those decisions generated. Red queen, black ace, and so on to the end. Now I want to slow this down because the language is essential. The person has dealt the cards down into 2 piles. You've got what happens when they deal them onto separate piles, and there you just don't touch them and you let them each take one, and that's an amazing, magical moment. But let's say they deal the final 2 cards onto 1 pile. The first thing I use is what I call the establishing premise. This is something that both Max Maven and Eugene Berger used in their equivoque routines. Instead of just saying point to a pile, which is common practice, I set up an establishing premise that helps us understand what's going to happen here. Also, that establishing premise will be reinterpreted later to suit my goals. So again, point to a pile, and let's say they point to this one and I just shove the other one out of the way. It's like, in my experience, the human brain has evolved very well to smell out ambiguity and ambiguous language. Everyone has had a sibling that's used ambiguous language to take advantage of them. We are actually, in doing equivoque, we're flying in the face of a very well-honed brain survival skill, ferreting out ambiguity. And so we need superior language to make this moment fly under the cognitive radar. And so, again, I use what I learned from Max and Eugene, an establishing premise. So we have 2 piles. Now we're going to eliminate one of these piles because for this I only need 1 pile. Now, if you parse that sentence logically, it kind of makes no sense. I only need one pile. We're going to eliminate a pile because for this I only need one pile. So I don't put a ton of emphasis on this. So we have 2 piles. Now we're going to eliminate a pile because for this we only need 1 pile. When I snap my fingers, hand either pile to me. And that establishing premise sentence is the key that will open the door for mystery. Because again, whatever they've done, I go back and reinterpret half of the establishing premise to make it seem like it is what I always intended to do. As I said before, because of the precision that's required in our language, because of the brain's uncanny ability to smell at ambiguity, equivoke is an advanced technique. The very best way for you to learn this is to study Max Maven's masterful DVD, Multiplicity. It's a 2.5-hour DVD in which Max talks about the history, the workings, the psychology, and practical techniques to improve your equivoke. Multiplicity is a major release for the magic and mentalism community, and if you're interested in this technique, you really should study it. So, establishing premise, we reinterpret it in terms of getting so that they each are holding one of the target cards. These cards slid off the table, and then we have our conclusion. A red queen and a black ace, and that's real magic. Johnny Thompson gave us the structure, the basics of a beautiful double prediction routine. What I have done is added layers of psychology, false memory, the Ray Goulet subtlety on this side, the use of 2 people to disguise the bad moment in the double deal force, and equivoke over here to generate snow, confusion, and yet fairness, that these were the 2 cards that were randomly generated throughout this entire process. The last thing I will say is the friendship game is really truly a friendship piece. Part of its charm is that we're playing together. You might try other presentation frames for this, but part of why everyone is willing to play is because we're talking about a game. And we're going for real magic through friendship. And in my experience, that makes this presentation extremely commercial. I hope you enjoyed this wonderful piece of card magic. Perhaps the best card routine I have constructed in the last few years. My name is Larry Haas. This routine, the friendship game, is one of my borrowed card stunners. Please leave a review at penguinmagic.com.